What's up, everybody? My name is Brad Montgomery, and this is a good day because I get to talk to a person who's going to teach us all how to be better on Zoom, how to have conversation that doesn't feel laggy and weird, and how to deal with those crazy family people that just make you a little bit crazy. You know who you're talking about. I know who you're thinking of. We have Debra Fine. Let's bring her in. Boom! Look at that software.
Hey,
De-
Brad.
Good
So glad
morning.
to be with you today.
Let me tell them a little bit about you, Debra. Debra Fine has been a professional speaker and trainer who teaches conversation skills for all of us, whether or not you're in business or you're in healthcare, whether you're in government or you're just a person and you want to talk better at a cocktail party. And she's got proven tactics and skills that have been published in many books in dozens of languages. Wow, that's kind of impressive. And she happens to be one of my favorite people on the planet. Debra, good morning.
Good morning, Brad. So good to be with you on this very sunny day in anticipation of Thanksgiving or COVID Thanksgiving.
Yeah, super exciting. Just all the anticipation of Thanksgiving, kind of in the toilet. Am I right? Am I right? A little bit? Just a little bit?
It is for us. I know that. And we just all have to get through this together. I think we've heard that expression before, but it needs to be done.
One of the many things that I love about your work is you have very specific ideas. We can copy your phrasing, and when we use it, we are better. So let me get off to a great question. How do you say this? Just help me do it better in conversation. How do you say to that weird, crazy uncle you don't really agree with and is a little bit weird and sometimes a little bit drunk? How do you say, "Hey, weird uncle, you dumbass"? How do you how do you how do you start with that one?
Well, whether your uncle or aunt is speaking about politics or rubbing it in that your candidate lost or talking about the Denver Broncos, the weather, whatever they say that you may be opposed to, you just say, oh, I mean, that's interesting. Whatever you can say that's genuine. Don't say, oh, that's smart or I agree. Just say, well, that's interesting. And then change the topic. So what miniseries have you watched? Or, once this is over, what's the number one thing on your bucket list? Or just change the topic. If you're aggravated by it or the buttons are pushed by it, or even better, assume what I call the role as the host. It's not my table. Let's say I was at your table, Brad, and your crazy uncle was there. This is what I do. I'd say, oh, that's an interesting observation about the Broncos. So, Paige, what's new with you since the last time I saw you? Assuming the burden of the host is where you include other people at the table and get away from that crazy uncle who's maybe had one too many drinks, who's monopolizing the table. It's up to all of us to make sure everyone's included at the table. The introverts, the extroverts, the new people, etc. And I'll take responsibility for that, even though it's your table.
Well, first of all, I see what you did there. Well done. I ask you a stupid question and you give me a really good answer anyway. I think you are assuming the burden of being the host. But that is actually one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about because I feel like when we're in conversation, especially with people we have emotional baggage with, aka family, we kind of feel like someone else should just take care of this, and why do they make me do it? But you're saying we need to take responsibility, and I love that about your stuff. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I think anyone viewing this who's shy and or introverted will really understand what I'm about to disclose, and that is that we sort of hope for other people to keep conversations going, to liven them up, to be vivacious. We're always hoping that a vivacious person is at the table that will take care of everything. And I say, whether you're introverted, shy, or if you're extroverted as well, it is up to us to assume the burden of other people's comfort at the table. So that not only means including other people, but not let somebody take over conversation, whether it's with strong opinions or just becoming a monopolizer. By the way, Brad, I happen to be an introvert that is hopefully behaving like an extrovert, especially on your program. But I used to pat myself on the back because at least I was a good listener. I sat there quietly at a Thanksgiving table and I listened, and I never assumed the burden of other people's comfort. I sort of expected them to make me feel comfortable somehow. And I'm saying that we can make other people feel comfortable with certain conversation skills. And we can also, if we make them feel comfortable, they'll feel good about us. But we have to, it's a burden that we need to assume instead of expecting other people to do that for us. You want some examples? For instance, if I would
Yeah.
not say to someone who's in college, let's say it's my niece or nephew or one of your children at my table, I would not say, how's school? Now, it might be interesting, their answer these days during a pandemic, but my guess is it's unlikely it would be interesting because most people, students included, when asked how's school, assume that's a rhetorical question that literally just means hello. It would be like, Brad, you and I are friends, good friends. And if I said to you, how are you? I'm guessing you would view that as me saying hello. It's like, and on Friday, this is what's going to happen now for about 2 months. How was your holiday?
Uh,
That just means hello. So I would suggest a couple of tactics to assume the burden at a Thanksgiving table. One is from, I would say to someone like someone who's in school, instead of saying how's school, I said, what's keeping you busy outside of school? Maybe they have a job, maybe they have a hobby, maybe they're doing yoga. Who knows? Let's talk about something that nobody else is talking about with this young person. And the best way I know to go that route is to say, what's keeping you busy outside of work, Brad? What's keeping you busy outside of planning your wedding? What's anything to sort of just dig in a little deeper and get to know this person and not ask the same rhetorical questions all the time. Another idea
wait,
is
wait.
this.
Let me just interrupt for a second, because hey, peeps, in case you were checking your email through that one, did you hear that bombshell question? What are you doing outside of work for fun? How do you phrase it, Deborah?
What's keeping you busy outside of work, or what are you doing for fun? Because we're all in a pandemic right now. Okay, so we do have that commonality, and in a way that's pretty unique. Most of us don't always have a commonality with one another, right? At a conference you do. Oh, you know, what brought you to this conference? At
Right.
a fundraiser, how'd you get involved with this charity? But now we have this commonality of COVID, and I can say to anybody, what's your silver lining? Because, and I'm not saying everybody has one. I think if they think hard enough, they'll come up with something.
Right.
But say to anybody, what's your silver lining during this pandemic is, I think, a good question at Thanksgiving and throughout,
Mm.
until we get this vaccine and we're ready to rock and roll again.
Well, help me with something, because you're doing great. And by the way, I'm kind of feeling selfish and lucky because I get to ask you questions that are in my world, and then you do this great job of globalizing it. What do you do with people when you say, "So, what are you doing for fun?" And they say, "Nothing. I'm a shut in. I'm in my apartment. I'm not sure if I'm clinically depressed, but I'm close, and I'm not at work, and my restaurant's." What do you say then?
That is a great question because, first of all, when someone acknowledges, and I'm gonna give you a two-forked answer to that. So that example you supplied actually gave me some free information from this person. They owned a restaurant or own a restaurant. They're depressed. So now I'm going to go with that. I'm going to stick with that and just say, so what kind of self-care are you doing right now in order
Oh,
to, in order to deal with the depression you're faced with? Or I might even say, what can I do? Or can we talk about that? Can we talk about the fact that you're depressed? And if there's anything, we could brainstorm that I could possibly do to help you. I mean, when someone discloses, I know you didn't mean to give such an extreme example. I think you didn't mean to give such an extreme example, Brad, but the fact is somebody could respond that way. And I think the most important thing is we don't act like we didn't hear it. It's like if you say to me, how are you doing, Debra? And I go, oh, good. My aunt has cancer. And you just go, oh, so what's happening with work? Don't ignore that elephant in the room, but let's talk about a skill. And a skill is digging in deeper. So in hopes that if somebody did disclose something that tragic or that challenging, as Brad just described, then dig in deeper and ask about the depression. Tell me about the dream of your restaurant. How did that begin? I'd like to hear about your history with this restaurant. Do you see any hope down the line, or what do you see down the road for you? But typically we need to use this device digging in deeper in much less extreme responses. For instance, you'll say to somebody, how's school? Because that's how you chose to launch the conversation. And they'll say, lousy, I'm stuck in my room all the time on a computer. So it's up to you to dig in deeper with another question and say something like, okay, so what do you do for fun when you get away from that computer and you're not on these online classes? Or dig in deeper and say, so what's your favorite class this year? I get that you're online and it stinks, but what is your favorite class and why? Or when you get back to school, what's the number one class you're dying to take face to face? It's up to us to dig in deeper with one more question to let them know we're sincere. If I ask you, so how's the project going, Brad? And you say pretty good. I'll say to you, well, what's been the greatest challenge, or what have you enjoyed the most about it? So how's the family, Brad? Great. You know, my son came in from school. Oh, so tell me, what's his year look like? I mean, how has that changed for him? I'm digging in deeper to let you know I really was interested in your son. I wasn't just asking a rhetorical question. A lot of times people don't mean, how was your weekend or how was your holiday? And you can drop it. But if it's me leading the conversation, I'll assume the burden of digging in deeper and letting you know I really mean it. How did Thanksgiving go? Good. Right. So what was your favorite dish? What was your favorite dish? Or what's your favorite tradition that you were able to incorporate this year? That's what I'll ask you on Friday. Don't call me Brett. I don't want to talk to you again on Friday.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a question from this wonderful person named Kim Aldridge. We were at this party. This really happened. Kim is an introvert. This is my wife, and this really loud, extroverted uncle said, "Why don't you talk more? What? You should talk more." And that, because my wife was an introvert, that was not the right thing to say. How do we, as hosts who want to make other people feel comfortable, encourage that quiet person without putting them on the spot?
Well, first of all, when you said she was an introvert, that really caught my attention. Did you know you just said that she wasn't? Rarely do people change overnight, but I'm just throwing that out. So I would say a couple of things. Use humor. When we're at the Thanksgiving table now, if you could get them one-on-one in the kitchen to say, I don't appreciate being confronted like that at the table, that's a whole different discussion. But if I'm at a table and somebody lashes out like that and puts me in the spot, Kim, if I were you, I would have done with you where I would have said, well, I'll be sure when I come up with the cure for cancer to speak up. For now, I'm just going to sit here and enjoy everyone else's conversation. Like, try to find humor. Like, often, what?
May I interrupt?
Sure.
This uncle wasn't lashing out. He was a big-hearted guy who had no understanding of quiet people. So he wasn't being rude. He was being generous. Like, hey, tell us about you, Kim. And then, if you're one of a quiet people, sometimes that just makes your heart go fast, and you don't have access to humor or a witty comeback.
Well,
right?
Then when someone's that kind-hearted, and I'm sorry I misunderstood, to say, I really appreciate your interest. Even if your heart's beating, I mean, Kim is very polite and thoughtful. I really appreciate your interest. Just nothing comes to mind that I want to share right now. I mean, just to respond in a thoughtful, polite way. That's all you can do. I mean, but I get that he didn't lash out, but I get that he's kind-hearted, but I find that a little pushy. So I'm not going to forgive him that easily for that. To say to somebody, we haven't heard from you all night at the dinner table, I think I think that lacks good manners. Now, to look at Kim and say, so Kim, what's new in your life since the last time we got to catch up? That would have been far more appropriate, instead of just putting somebody on the spot and say, we haven't heard a word out of you. I think he could have helped her and shown an interest in her. So Kim, you're a big reader. What have you been reading lately? Right?
Yeah, that clearly would have been better. It's funny because we've talked. This is family lore. This conversation. This is family lore in that we've talked about this poor guy. Even here, Kim just put up another comment. She says, "I think he was uncomfortable with me." This guy had just met Kim an hour ago, and was kind of holding forth and laughing and big personality, and just was really uncomfortable with that quiet woman he didn't understand.
But that this is a really good example of what extroverts need to be extroverts think because they're vivacious or charismatic or whatever we label them as, that they're the life of the party. They're born with this gift of gab, and we all supposedly aspire to that. But I do not aspire to be like, as good-hearted as you say he is. I do not aspire to be like that. He was not assuming the burden of Kim's comfort. Instead, he held forth, and then he wanted to know why somebody else didn't hold forth, and yet he didn't give her a platform. And a platform, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, is to include other people by not demanding it, by saying, Kim, tell me a little bit about you. I don't know anything about you. How did you and Brad meet? That would have been a good, that's an obvious. It's sitting right there in front of me. I guess he knew you were married, right? That wasn't a secret a year ago. Okay. So how did you two meet? Or tell me about, what keeps you busy? What keeps you busy, Kim? But he didn't do that. And so I actually don't find that as good-hearted. I think his discomfort with her being quiet is his problem. And it's not up to Kim or anybody else to make him feel comfortable. So as nice as you're being about this uncle, when people are uncomfortable with quiet people, that's their problem. It's not somebody else's problem. I would do a shout out to Kim though. And I would say, Kim, don't change who you are, but assume the burden of making people feel comfortable by, maybe if you don't want to talk about yourself, to show an interest in them. So tell me about, now you're related to my husband's mother or whatever. So tell me about where you grew up and what that was like for you. And just that way you don't even have to talk. But introverts are required to assume the burden as well. I'm not excusing. I don't like what he did, Brad. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Either I don't think any quiet person likes to be called out that way. Let me add on to this, because I've had so much time to think about this one tiny thing. The extroverts amongst us need to just wake up and not be annoying. We think we're being helpful by saying, I haven't heard you talk. Could you talk now? That is not helpful. So what we need to do is take advantage of your wisdom, Deborah, and have some you have like brilliant icebreaker questions. And I'm going to ask you about those, but Cindy Ely has a great question. Any tips for controlling a Zoom conversation so people don't interrupt and talk over each other, followed by big silences? Yeah, because Zoom is worse, isn't it? Because of the lag and the awkwardness. Wisdom?
Well, I had a big family Zoom last night for because of a loss in the family. So all over the country. So I think there were like 33 people. And you know what? I wasn't the leader. I said, how about we mute everybody? And how about when you want to take a turn, you raise your hand? I'm in a couples book club, and we had that a week ago Sunday, and because there's certain people that are dominant, and by that I mean a certain gender in our couples book club. And so, and that happens in real life. It's much easier on Zoom in a way, because you have to raise your hand now to take a turn, because otherwise it's bad enough when they're talking over each other when we used to meet for dinner and talk about the book. Now it's horrible, but somebody has to play the host here and say, how about everybody? So I can't hear everybody when we're talking over each other. How about everybody, we mute and then we raise our hand and sort of take a turn so that we can hear from everybody. And if it's a business meeting, then that's up to whoever's leading the meeting. And I would think that they would do that. So it's typically within a family that happens, or a group of friends. So just be helpful. I've seen this work a lot better if we all mute, and then we sort of either raise our paddles, and I get that I hate a certain generation doesn't understand how to raise paddles. So how about we just raise our hand and go like this, and then we'll know that. A certain like that. It's true, Kim. It's a whole different world than a couples book club. And if the couples are heterosexual, let me throw that out. Okay, just throwing that out. So I hope that answered your question. But I think Zoom is great in another way, though, that we've never had. It's that you see everybody's name. And I'll say about like last night with the 33 people, it was so great because you could say, Joe's got his hand up. Marianne's got her hand up. I mean, the host could do that. Whereas if we had a group of 33 people, it is unlikely that most people would have memorized everyone's name.
So, Deborah, I imagine that There might be people who are uncomfortable saying, okay, it's a party of 8 people on Zoom and we're supposed to be buddies or families or whatever. And to say, like, to run it like a business meeting and say, all right, here's what we're going to do. Mute yourself, raise your hand. People will feel like that just feels awkward, even though I can see that that would be helpful. So, you got any tips about that?
I mean, I've done it. I've said, hey, I mean, I have 4 sisters. So there's 5 of us all over the country, and they have families too. And I've heard myself say, hey, how about we take a turn, everybody go around and let's get an update? Because people were, in the beginning, they're like this. And then it's, I mean, is there something wrong with saying, hey, how about we go around the room and hear what's going on for everybody? Give it a couple minutes.
No, and also I'm kind of giggling to myself because it just reminds me of how we started, which is you saying we need to take responsibility to make them feel comfortable. And I see you're doing that with your sisters. You're
Well, and
consistent.
I really try to be, and I'm not the host. I am the oldest, so I'm the bossiest. There's no doubt about that. But I do remember as recently as 2 weeks ago, it was Judy's birthday, and I realized we didn't do like, let's go around. It was more whatever. And then I realized that somebody, which is my middle sister, was doing most of the talking. And I just said, Terry, that's the sister in Orlando. I said, so Terry, what's new with you and Paul? I just said it like, I wasn't like telling everyone else what to do. I just said, what's new with you? Just as I would have said, the uncle should have done with Kim, to say, Kim, I don't know anything about you. Tell me about how you two met.
Uh,
I don't think that's being that bossy.
all right, I'm with you. I feel lucky because I get to be your friend, but also I've read your books and I've listened to your books on Audible, and I read the teenage thing with my kids. She has a teenage book about beyond texting. Fantastic.
Thanks.
Anyway, one of the things that I find myself using over and over and over again is some of your conversation starters. You have phrases I have memorized and then used live. Can you gift us 1 or 2 of those, please?
Well, I love this one. Instead of saying, how are you? If I really want to hear an answer, I'm not in a hurry. We're not passing, whatever. I'll say, catch me up, Brad. What's new with the family since the last time I saw you? Catch me up, bring me up to date. What's new with fill in the blank? So even Kim, who I don't talk to regularly, instead of saying, how are the kids? Because Kim is most likely, and not because she's an introvert, just because she's not sure I really mean it. But if I say, Kim, bring me up to date, what's new with the kids? She knows I really mean it. And it's not just because it's an open-ended question. It's because it asks for detail in return. Bring me up to date, or catch me up on what's new with business, Brad, since the last time I talked with you. Now, if you give me some funny answer because you're funny, what's new with business? We still have a pandemic. I'll say, so what have you been working on lately, Brad? I mean, what, besides messing around and joking around, what's one thing that you've been working on? I've let you know I really mean, and you might say Facebook Live, or you might say I worked on some technical whatever, and then we'd have something to talk about. So that's one of my favorite ways to launch a conversation.
Catch me up. Check.
Catch me up, bring me up to date. What's new with, like, if I was lucky enough to talk to Paige, I'd say, what's new with your college application since the last time I talked to you? I wouldn't say, how are college applications going? So she could say, I don't know, or no good. What's new with? And the other thing that's key, especially at Thanksgiving, is let's be super careful here, folks. Let's not ask questions like, so did you get into the University of Chicago? I mean, that is not a good question. Here's a much better.
Or we could rephrase it. Are you a loser?
Yeah.
All right, but wait. So instead of saying, "Did you get into that school?" or "Did you get the raise?" What do we say instead? Is it back
I
to
say, catch me up on your college search.
Catch me up.
Catch
All
me
right,
up
good.
on your college search. If I know someone's on a college search. So now at this time of year, pandemic or no pandemic, there are a lot of, especially seniors, but some juniors in high school who are now looking at what's going to happen next. If you don't know that they're going to be on a college search, don't make that assumption. Don't say, so what colleges are you looking at? Say, so, bring me up to date. What are your thoughts about after high school graduation? And then they can tell you, well, I'm going to take a gap year. I haven't decided that I want to go to college. I'm thinking about doing the Peace Corps. I'm thinking about, college isn't in my future. I'm looking at the military. Let them tell you what they want you to know. It's like saying to a young person at your table, so did you graduate? Well, what if they didn't graduate, folks? Don't ask a question you don't know an answer to. If Uncle Joe is sitting at your table, but Aunt Ann isn't there, don't say, how's Aunt Ann? What if she finally left him? What if she took all the money? What if she took the house and the kids? Instead, say, bring me up to date. What's new with the family, Joe, since the last time we saw you? And Joe will tell you whatever he wants to talk about. It's like asking somebody about, if you don't know they still hold a position at Wells Fargo, somebody's at your Thanksgiving table, don't say, how's Wells Fargo? What's new with work since the last time I saw you? And they'll tell you what they want you to know.
All right. If you were just, if your medication just kicked in, that was a bombshell.
You want some others not to do on Thanksgiving, Brad? You want some other ideas of what not to do on Thanksgiving or any holiday?
But I got to say, that phrase, tell me about your family, what's going on with your family. Yeah. I have used that hundreds of times, and I learned it from you. That is so helpful, and it has got me out of trouble a few times because I realized, oh, I'm so glad I didn't ask about your spouse or whatever.
Well, and it's true, Kim is a great example of someone who has a multifaceted life. And my guess is most people say to her, how are the kids? But there's so much more to Kim. And so I personally, if I ever had time alone, would say, so what's keeping you busy outside of the kids? And she'll tell me about a book or, whatever she's up to, some project.
I have a very specific question. And also I'd love if you're willing to give us another generalized conversation starter. The question is, some people are going to be on a Zoom call with grandkids. So, and how does that work? How do you have conversation with a kid when you're a generation and a half or 2 generations apart, especially with an audience, a gallery?
Well, first of all, if you can be prepared. So if it's somebody in your family, I know you can be prepared. Oftentimes for even meetings for work, you can be prepared, but let's stick with your question. What do you know about your grandchild? What do you know about your grandma or grandpa or your aunt in Maryland? What do you know? Think about it in advance of the Zoom call. Is she a teacher? Is he into horses? Is he a big fan of Tom Brady? What do you already know about that kid? Does he love gaming? And so you're ready with that kind of question. So last time when we talked, I know you were a big fan of gaming. So what's new in the gaming world right now? But the worst time to think of those kinds of genuine questions are when you can't think of anything to talk about. It's the worst time to think of anything to talk about is when there's nothing to talk about. Be prepared. Think about who's going to be on the call. Think about assuming that burden of reaching out to them and showing a genuine interest in something specific in their lives without making the mistake of saying, did you graduate? But I do think we could say to a grandfather, so besides pandemic right now, what was the hardest, year of your life and why? And he'll tell you what he's willing to tell you. It could be Vietnam War. It could be a time he lost his job or got kicked out of school. I mean, who knows? And you're going to really get to know somebody. And wouldn't that be great to cultivate connections, not only now, but always, where you really, truly got to know people instead of hoping that conversation would just happen and we all just hit it off? It doesn't work that way. I want to really get to know you while I can, while we have this time on Zoom together or where you're at my table.
Yeah, what I keep hearing through this is that phrase you started with about taking responsibility for making other people comfortable, and you do it so selflessly, Debra.
But you have to be prepared. You should be prepared, right? Most people don't prepare for conversation because it's like, what a waste of saliva. I will either. But think about it. If any of you are going to have a Zoom call, like I know we're having a Zoom call. I will be asking, and my son and his girlfriend were supposed to come in from New York. So what I know what one of the questions I will already ask him. Tell me about your menu. What did you cook? And what are you most thrilled with how it turned out? Or did you come up with some new? I'm not going to say, how are you? Even my own son, what do you think he's going to say? He's going to say, good, Mom, how are you? I'm going to say, tell me about your menu. What'd you do new and different? Because he's been at my house for Thanksgiving every year of his life. This will be the first year. So what'd you come up with? But I'm prepared already, and it's 2 days away. What are you going to watch on TV? I mean, I know that they're
Yeah.
not going to eat. What are you going to watch on TV? Oh, tell me about that show.
I can't remember where I learned this from you, if it was one of your books or your maybe one of your live programs, but you've said that when you're in the car with your husband Steve driving to a cocktail party, you guys kind of go over like, okay, don't forget this guy's. We want to ask him that. This guy is going through this. This woman has that. You're really serious about this, and I've been in groups with you. You're a master.
Oh, thanks. Well, I don't want Steve to get too much credit. It's not like it's not like he does that proactively. It's more like, let's turn sports talk off. We have 5 minutes. Let's prepare ourselves. Who's going to be there? Let's remember their names, and who's this and who's this. What's her name again? What's her name? Okay. And okay, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to? And he just rolls his eyes and takes some of it in.
Yeah. Well, I think people are listening to you, Deborah.
Thanks.
All right. Can you give us one more nugget? So, what are you doing for fun? Catch me up on this. You've got so many genius ones. Would you share one more?
Can we talk about some Thanksgiving conversation killers to avoid?
Oh, killers, yes.
Or holiday killers to avoid. I call them landmines. Landmines. How's this one? So did you prepare this, or did you cook this? Is it your recipe, or did you just thaw this out? Don't do that. Here's another one. Are you sure you want another piece of pie, Brad? You sure you do?
Oh.
Don't, come on, you guys. If he asks for pie, it's judgmental enough right now. What do you mean you went to Costco? You know, Costco's not safe. Let's not be judging. We should be judging in real life. Like, in my opinion, let's follow some science here. But at the Thanksgiving table, let's not be too judgy. And that means, why aren't you drinking, Brad? You don't want a cocktail? What's going on? Okay, folks, somebody doesn't want to have a cocktail. It's up to them. Leave them alone. Even someone like all the mothers out there and the fathers. When are you two getting married already? Okay, listen, stop this. Just, when are you guys going to have kids? What's been like a year now? When are you guys going to have some? Shh. Don't do that.
Yeah, those are such funny things because they're so true. Because we've all been there. I've asked those stupid things. I'm guilty.
How's this one? Your candidate didn't stand a chance, right? What do you have to say for yourself now? Let's not do that, folks. No matter how you feel about this election, and not just the presidential, of course, but Senate and Congress and your town council, for that matter. Let's not go there.
Kim asks, are we allowed to call those people out? So if someone calls you out and says, "When are you going to have kids already?"
This is what I tell people this all the time. When somebody asks you, when are you going to have kids already? This is what you say. Mom, I'll tell you what. First, I'm going to call the New York Times so they know first. And then you'll be my second call, and you'll be sure to know. I mean, use humor whenever you can get away with it. And if you just say, don't get defensive about the drink, because this person is either too pushy and you're not going to change them. I mean, if we could change people, Brad, and get them to not ask stupid questions, then I would have changed my first husband. I would have made him perfect and I would have kept him. But I couldn't change him. So we cannot change these people. We need to deflect them, especially at Thanksgiving. So if somebody says to me, so why aren't you drinking? Or can you hear a mom doing this? So you couldn't even iron your shirt, Brad? I mean, come on.
Well, I'm picturing the opposite of why are you not drinking? It's like, really? Is that your third?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but if somebody says to me, is this your recipe, or did you buy this at King Soopers? I say, I'll tell you what. I'll let you know. We'll go in the kitchen privately, and I'll be sure to tell. I'll tell you. It's like, because people ask that question, you've got 16 people at your Thanksgiving table. They go, did you make this or did you buy this? Don't ask me that in front of the 16 people. I'm trying to get away with just putting it out there.
Yeah, but I'm pushing back a little bit because you're so good at this. And when you say, just use humor, deflect with humor, and then you gave us your examples, they're genius. But if someone does that to me, I'm going to be a little upset and maybe nervous and angry, and I'm not positive I would have that witty comeback.
You have to have that attitude going in at Thanksgiving. Now, if we're not at Thanksgiving and somebody lobs one at me, Or if somebody said to me, I see your candidate lost, what do you have to say for yourself now? So now we're on a private conversation. You say that to me. I said, you trying to provoke me? I mean, now I'm not funny anymore. No, I'm not funny at all. Are you trying to provoke me? Do you have an agenda in mind? It's just like if somebody said to me, the Broncos don't have a chance this year. Now that's probably true. Okay. But if they said the Broncos don't have a chance this year, I know that's not political, so it's not as provoking, but it is, you're making a statement of opinion and you've shown no interest in my opinion. So what I might say to you is, are you making an announcement, or would you like to go back and forth on this? So if we're one-on-one and you do that number to me, like the stock market's going to tank, that's an opinion, but you forgot to ask my opinion. That means you're a lousy conversationalist, but that's okay. I'll forgive you. And I'll just say, so where's your crystal ball? And do you want to know what my thoughts are on the stock market? So that's in private. I'm talking about a Thanksgiving dinner where we've got 16 people, or hopefully not this year. We've got 5 people at the table. If you let people know you've been provoked, I mean, if somebody says something racist or sexist or gay bash, okay, I'll pounce on them right away. There is no humor involved for me. I'll just say that is inappropriate. We're not going there. You want to talk about that? We'll talk about that another time. But then I assume the burden of changing the conversation. So what's everybody watching? I need a new series to watch so that there's not that huge pregnant pause there.
Yeah, I think that's something so many of us have been thinking about in the past 9 months as we become more aware of racial tensions, political tensions, climate tensions. Anyway, many of us have said, would I call somebody out? Do I have enough guts to say that out loud? And I love your tactic of, you're saying yes, but make sure you have a follow-up, which is taking the burden upon yourself to move the conversation forward. Genius, right. Debra Fine.
Right. I mean, if we're one-on-one or we're a group of 4 and you're not, I would call you out. It's different, but we're talking about a holiday table. If somebody said, somebody's wasted and says something really inappropriate, I'll say that is really inappropriate. I mean, let's face it. Now we're with family. If somebody's had too much to drink, it's okay to say to somebody, to take them aside and say, hey buddy, you want to go lay down? Can I help you? I mean, we're trying to help our family. We want to do right by them or our friends.
Well, okay. This is interesting. Take us back to Zoom. So if somebody says something you feel like I can't let that go, you can't pull them aside and ask them if they need a nap.
Zoom is tough. So I would certainly, I'll tell you why Zoom is tough. We're not supposed to be talking over each other. We already went there. So now if I interject and then other people do, now we're going to have a food fight here, right? Where everybody's saying, Debra, back off, or, well, you shouldn't have said that, Joe, or whatever. So I don't know that I have a good answer. I do think if somebody said something inappropriate, even if it wasn't racist, sex, that's extreme. But if somebody said something like to one of my children, or a cousin said something inappropriate, like, well, what are you going to do with your life? I mean, you're still living at home. Okay, so you could picture somebody saying something like that, right? Because they just don't have any barriers, filters. I would say, hey, back off, Marianne. We all have our fish to fry. So tell us, Rachel, because Rachel was the one that's still living at home. Rachel, what's been keeping you busy outside of, your...
You've got that like 1-2 punch. You answer and then you follow up.
I'm always assuming the burden of people's comfort. I really mean that with all my heart, unless somebody's a jerk. If somebody's a class A jerk, then as long as they haven't hurt somebody, if they're just making a fool out of them, let them keep going, I guess. But if they're monopolizing the conversation, then I'll say, hey, we haven't heard from Elizabeth. What's new in your life, Elizabeth? I do that stuff I do it at parties with people that are people think that sometimes Kim would never do this, but even introverts, they'll still be telling you about their trip 8 minutes later. And you're thinking, you just became a monopolizer. You think you're a quiet person, and you are a quiet person, but we found a topic that you love to talk about. the SpaceX launch, and you're just going on and on about Elon Musk and what he did with SpaceX and how, and we're like 8 minutes into this. I think I'm done with this part. So that's when I'm going to say, wow, you have a lot of passion for the SpaceX program. So let's talk about movies. There haven't been any, so I've been watching some oldies. One of my favorites is, and I'll talk about Forrest Gump or something for 2 minutes and then throw the ball back. I'm going to change the topic of conversation. Yeah. I'm going to let you monopolize me about your kids and how genius they are and that they're all in AP programs and going into the Olympics. Okay, I'll let you have 3 or 4 minutes.
Climbing Mount Everest.
It's what I call exiting the conversation with grace. That's an important thing to do well with conversation.
Let me, if you let me, I've got one more topic that I'd love to cover with you.
Okay.
This is for people are sheltering in place right now, right? So they're on their own. They're with their immediate family. Do your questions like, tell me what you do out for fun. I trying to figure out how to phrase this. They don't apply, because if I ask my wife that, she'll say, I was sitting next to you, or my kids say, everything about me. Shut up. What about conversation for your immediate bubble or family group when you've been with each other for 9 months?
Well, I'll ask you, I'll put you on the spot, Brad. Have you asked any, and maybe you have you asked any of them what's number 1 on their bucket list when this is over?
No, I haven't. That's a good one.
Well,
I'm good at that.
Yeah. Okay. No. Okay. I think that's a really good, unless you'd already done it, I think that's what I'll be asking. What's your silver lining in this? What has been your silver lining? Have you asked your wife that question? Or
no.
do you probably, do you know the answer?
I'm embarrassed. I take the 5th.
Well, how are we doing so far, Brad?
This is why I need you.
No,
you're good at this.
People, I don't know. I wouldn't say I don't get mocked. I get dissed a little bit for how does somebody turn small talk into a business, and like, what a waste of saliva, small talk. But small talk is the appetizer for relationships. So even with my husband, like I actually did this last night. Yesterday was Monday. So I said to him, so who's playing Monday Night Football? Now, Brad, do you think I care?
I'm pretty sure you don't.
I could care less, but I know he cares. I mean, he cares, let me tell you. And I said to him, oh, so is that a good game? I think it was. I think Kansas City or something. I can't remember now. I said, why? And it only lasted like a minute during dinner, but it's so much better than just sitting there and staring at each other, you know? And so I did that. Then I asked him, so who's playing on Thanksgiving? I know Detroit always does, but what are there any good games? Because I don't want you to watch football all day Thursday, since it's just you and me. I'd like to watch a movie or something. I said, how about you pick out the best game, and the rest of the time we watch movies. And so that was part of the conversation last night.
First it's the football game, then it's Hallmark movies. Oh, honey.
Right. But how's this? Here's a third question for you at your Thanksgiving table.
Good.
What's your favorite Thanksgiving memory?
Oh, yeah.
And now the other thing that's happening, despite COVID, is that the holidays are coming soon after. So whether you observe Christmas, which I think most of the world does, or Hanukkah, or whatever it may be, and they shouldn't be correlated. They're not the same kind of holiday, but I'll just throw this out. So with the holidays coming, what was the favorite gift you ever gave? And it doesn't have to be for the holidays. It could have been a birthday gift. What is the favorite gift you've ever given?
Right.
What was the favorite gift you've ever received? This is all about being prepared, but these questions are so meaningful because you really learn about people. If you were to ask me the favorite gift I ever received, there's a story. I think it's interesting. I think it shows that somebody really went out of their way on my behalf with love, and we all have stories like that. And here's another thing that you didn't ask me about. That's really key. We've talked about a lot of icebreaker questions and launching conversation questions. What we didn't talk about that's just equally as important, especially with different generations at the table, is self-disclosure. Self-disclosure is when I might say to Steve, I've been thinking a lot about fill in the blank, or I was thinking that when my dad did this at Thanksgiving, I remember we had lamb, and this is a real memory for me. I remember when we had lamb and we all got sick. I'm bringing, no, it's true,
That
and
was
I'm never,
awesome.
it's my mother and her cooking, but um, when somebody disclosed to their children or their niece or nephew or a sister something that's good, I just finished a really good book, or I just watched a great show, or I just learned that da 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 da. You've raised a topic of conversation without asking a question, and you've disclosed something about yourself. And the more you disclose about yourself without being a monopolizer, the more people can be connected with you. So if I disclose to you that I finished a book, a memoir, and it really taught me a lot about Yemen, I knew nothing about Yemen. That's all I have to say. I'm not going to go on and on and on. If you're interested, you'll say, so tell me about the book. And now we have something to talk about. Plus, I've disclosed to you that I'm a reader, the kind of a book that is, do you follow me? This is a really important part. And I'm saying to introverts and shy people, you're just as responsible as everyone else to use self-disclosure. If you sat at the table on Thanksgiving and said in front of your kids and wife, my favorite Thanksgiving memory is this, or the worst Thanksgiving I ever had as a kid was this, and this is why. My parents wouldn't let me come home from Thanksgiving for my freshman year. How am I doing, Brad? My parents wouldn't let me come home when I was, a family invited me over, but I felt awkward or uncomfortable. Now I'm making that part up. I mean, that's self-disclosure, and that's an important part of being a great conversationalist and bringing this
Yeah.
tapestry of cultivating connections.
I'm going to um this conversation is being recorded. I'm going to play that bit back for my cute little three children because they are very open about this. Hey, how'd the conversation go? Oh, it was easy because I asked her three questions and she just kept talking and I didn't have to do anything. They have not absorbed that self-disclosure even though they've listened to you in our car. Kills me, but I get it. Yeah, and
But
that
you force them. No kid wants to be forced to do anything.
right, I know. But
Your kids are
really, to
smart.
me, that self disclosure is part of where you started, which is taking responsibility to make other people comfortable, and you can't do that unless you got to give a little bit. Also, I'm going to put you on the spot in a minute, but I'm going to give you a moment to think. I like to end Deborah with asking my guests what gives them hope right now. And while you think about that, I just want to let the rest of the world know Deborah Fine is a star. And if you feel like this type of wisdom would serve you and your organization, well, guess what? She's available. DeborahFine.com. She, I'm a professional speaker too. In case you didn't know that, BradMontgomery.com. But I have been in the front of audiences who have just had Deborah, and it's hard to follow her because they're like, "Whoa, so you're the person following Deborah? Good luck." She's amazing. So look her up, DeborahFine.com. Any organization will be improved by having her as a guest. Now, Miss Fine of the Small Talk, Fine Art of Small Talk. I screwed up the book, damn it. What gives you hope right now?
Thank you for asking. And you are a rock star speaker, and I've been in the audience many times, and I've been able to recommend you many times, and I just look like a rock star for recommending you. Just want to throw that out. So thanks for promoting me, Brad. I really appreciate it. What gives me hope, truthfully, is that so many things are now up in the air. And what I mean by that, like a good example is working from home. Now, people like you and I work from home anyways, but I'm thinking about my children, many of them who had to go into an office, do the commute, do the whole thing. Can you imagine my hope of, and this is just one little example, of my 35-year-old son who took the subway every day into an office in Manhattan, then back. So all that time on the subway, all that time in an office. When he's a parent someday, and I hope that he is, and if he gets to work from home, look at all the more time he'll have with his family than so many dads and moms did because of a commute. So the world is, it's shifted so much that it gives me hope that will just what we've seen with climate change. We haven't seen a huge change, but we have seen less cars. I mean, we're going to be very innovative because of what happened. And that gives me a lot of hope, despite a lot of sadness and heartbreak. And I won't get political, but when you just think about healthcare for all, and how critical it is, and education and the internet, making sure that everyone has access to the internet. So that gives me a lot of hope, Brad, because we've seen the worst. Now, what are we going to do to be the best? What are we going to do? Let's go. How about you? What gives you hope, Brad?
Nope, not going to let you do that.
What?
You just wrapped it up with a bow. And then I would be disappointed if you didn't do it, because let me just call it the technique. You did such a good job of telling us what gives you hope. And then you were classic Debra Fine and said, "So, Brad." But I'd rather end with you because that was beautiful.
Okay, well, I'll have to wait to have a drink with you to hear your answer then. Okay.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll meet you in the kitchen so we can talk about my weird family. Okay, if family, if you're listening, it was just a metaphor. You're not weird at all, except for that one. You know who you are. That one. Yeah. Everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. If you're on this, hit a like, hit a thumbs up, hit a share. Facebook is a weird. It's kind of an art, and I'm still honestly learning it. So not only am I learning this software, but I'm learning Facebook. So it really does hit. Just hit it right now. Hit a star, or there's no stars, right? Deborah, are there stars? Hit like, hit thumbs up, leave a comment. Those weird things help me a lot. DebraFine.com is where you should go next. Ms. Fine, thanks for being here. I'm so grateful.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Montgomery. It's been my absolute pleasure. It's just fun to be with you. Thank you for your warm attention and your
Aw.
company.
Um, everybody take care. Bye-bye.